What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over a current Facebook ad creative testing strategy that I've been using that has absolutely been killing it for me personally, and it's allowed me to keep my creatives relatively consolidated for the ad limits that are currently in place for some of my new brands and new pages that are capped at 250 ads. For those of you guys that don't know about the ad limits, I have created a video on that, so I'll link that somewhere around the screen, or maybe I'll link it down below. So definitely check that out. But basically, Facebook confines our Facebook page ad limit based off the amount that we're spending. So a lot of us, when we begin our e-commerce brands, we're spending less than $100,000 per month, and therefore we only have 250 ads that we can use. Now, if you're someone that likes to test 3 to 5 ad creatives per ad set, that might only mean being able to run 50 ad sets within your Facebook ad campaigns at one given time. And for those of us that like to maybe have 10 or 20 different ad sets per campaign, that might only be like 2 or 2.5 total campaigns, which doesn't make any sense if we're trying to run an e-commerce business, spend more money, test more creatives and more audiences, and scale. So what I'm going to show you is how you can quickly identify what your best creative is, double down on that creative so you can leave as much ad space as possible for only the creatives that are working and yielding you a positive ROI, rather than those other creatives that are just sucking up your budget and aren't giving you good performance. All right, so we're going to mix things up a bit, and we are currently on my Surface Book laptop, which is also a little bit of a tablet, but I never got to use the tablet feature, and I've been using it a lot more recently, and it's pretty fun. Now, before we dive in, I just wanted to give a little bit of a disclaimer. I didn't really get into any scuffles. I know you're going to be seeing this weird bruise on my eye. We were just playing some street ball, had a couple of elbows thrown, and got a little bit of a black eye up here, so try not to be focused on this the entire video. Try to be focused on the screen. We're going to be dropping some value. Let's dive in. All right, so with most businesses, you are going to be starting with your cold test audiences and maybe a select few group of creatives. And I'm going to be talking more about when you actually have those group of interests or audiences that are converting best for you, and you want to test some additional creatives. So usually how it might look like in the beginning is having something along the lines of this structure, right? You have campaign 1, and then you have multiple ad sets, right? So ad set 1, ad set 2, ad set 3. So depending on how many audiences that you try, this is generally going to be how it looks like. And then within each ad set, you can choose. What I recommend is usually having anywhere between 1 and 3 creatives. So creative 1, creative 2, creative 3, not to be confused with campaign. Now, typically when you have multiple creatives per ad set, Facebook is going to delegate the spend where it thinks it is going to work, but where not necessarily is getting the highest performance. It might be getting the lowest CPCs, it might be getting the lowest cost per add to carts, more views, and even possibly a lower CPM, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the better creative. Now, oftentimes Facebook is right with their spend allocation, but sometimes there aren't. So I'm going to show you how you can actually take your best audiences and test multiple creatives so that you can isolate your best, maybe 1 or 2 that you can rock with long term. All right, so let's say you have at least 3 interests that are absolutely crushing it for you with the best creatives that you've already established, but you want to test new creatives. How are you going to integrate that in what you're currently doing to keep it consolidated and to find those 1 or 2 best performing creatives without taking up too much ad space or too much ad spend? So you're going to have these 3 ad sets that we've already established are doing well. You're going to have ad set number 1, ad set number 2, and ad set number 3. And all of these audiences, you want to have as many sales as possible, ideally 5 or more sales, having run for a few days, and making sure that they're consistently profitable. Now, most of these ad sets are already probably going to have your formerly highest performing creatives, but now you want to test new creatives. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I structure my campaign for creative testing. So we're going to have our main campaign that's going to be housing all of our ad sets and our ads, and we're actually going to take a combination of all 3 of these interests and we're going to stack them together. So our audience is going to look something like this: audience 1 stacked with audience 2 stacked with audience 3. So depending on your best performing countries, your best performing ages, genders, etc., you can confine those things a little bit, but you want to stack what is notoriously doing well and performing best for you, and giving Facebook a very broad but still relevant and high performing audience to be able to allocate your spend towards whatever creatives it would like for you. Now with this ad set, if you want to test any combination of, let's say, 2 or 3 creatives, you would house them obviously underneath that one ad set, and you'd be testing, creative 1, creative 2, and creative 3. Now again, the problem with Facebook is that they don't always know what the best pocket of audience is or what the best creative is going to be when it comes to yielding results. So we never want to put all of our eggs in one basket, or we never want to put all of our creatives underneath just one audience. So we're actually going to duplicate this audience for a total of 5 times. So now we're going to have 5 of these audiences, and each of these audiences are going to house those 3 different creatives. Now it is entirely up to you whether you want to structure this as a CBO or an ABO, because both yield quite similar results. But let's assume we are operating a CBO. We probably want to set this budget anywhere between about $50 and $100 to make sure we're getting enough spend to be able to actually determine what creatives are working and which ones aren't. Now, typically what we're going to see once this campaign unfolds and spends for about 1 to 2 days is one obvious ad creative that is not doing that well, and another ad creative that might obviously be the best performer, and then one that's kind of in the middle that you're on the fence of. You don't want to completely get rid of, but it might not be as good as that absolute best one. So in that scenario, let's say creative 1 and creative 3 are absolutely crushing it, and you want to have them fight to the death in another campaign to make sure that you're actually using the best creative and you're not prematurely taking out the one that looked like it was the best and leaving another one that could have had a ton of potential as well. So now what we're going to go ahead and do is make a campaign number 2. So now campaign number 2 is going to be structured almost identically, but in this case we're going to have 4 of those audiences instead of 5, and each of them are going to actually get their own creative. So it'll look something like this, where we're actually going to allocate creative 1 to 2 of the audiences and creative 3 to the other 2 audiences. And now since you are going to be using the better 2 of those 3 creatives, you can start to ramp up this spend just a little bit. So let's say you started with a $50 budget with this first campaign. Maybe you might want to go to a $100 budget here. And as a CBO, it is going to allocate towards these unbiased audiences that are all the exact same. And so the performance is strictly going to be dictated based off of the creatives. So if creative 1, for example, those audiences get a majority of the spend and they're profitable and at a high ROAS, then you found your winner. Now, since we've also consolidated the creatives, we've actually gone from this first campaign, which was 15 ads, to the second campaign actually only utilizing 4 ads. And now since relevant audiences from what your previous creatives were responding best with are also performing with these new creatives, that it's likely that any new audiences that resonate with those other creatives are likely going to work with these new creatives. Some of your new cold and warm audiences are probably also going to resonate well with these new creatives that we've just been able to identify. Now, this is typically a great way from going from having a lot of different creative ideas to narrowing it down to just those high performing set of 1 or 2. And it's also a good opportunity to figure out what set of ad sets and audiences work best together, because that has its own set of scaling opportunities. You can put those in their own campaigns and actually scale them after finding what creative works, or you can simply try them as ad sets in your cold testing campaign just to develop some audiences that might be giving you more consistency and being able to reach a broader group of customers. So I know it was a little bit slower of a video. I apologize for my technical skills with this guy. I'm going to be learning how to do these types of videos a lot better over time, so bear with me. But I hope you got a ton of value out of this and you can implement it towards your next set of creative tests. And other than that, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.